Have you ever wondered, how does a man who once lied about his wife being his sister in Egypt due to fear suddenly become brave and fearless, leading 300 men in a surprise attack on the army to rescue his kidnapped loved ones? This is indeed the astonishing transformation of Abram, the patriarch of ancient Israel. But to understand this change, we need to start with Abram's separation from Lot. At that time, Abram and his nephew Lot had returned from Egypt to Canaan with numerous cattle and sheep, and their wealth had greatly increased. However, problems also arose, disputes among the herders over water sources and pastures. Therefore, Abram voluntarily proposed to part ways. He said, "We are relatives, let us not quarrel." This statement reveals Abram's generosity and faith. He allowed Lot to choose the land first, and as a result, Lot unhesitatingly chose the most fertile Jordan Valley, which was in the direction of Sodom. Abraham retreated to the land of Canaan, relatively desolate, but he believed that the Creator would watch over him. It was here that he built an altar and once again offered sacrifices to the Creator, reaffirming his faith. Unexpectedly, a few years later, Sodom was plunged into an epic war. At that time, Sodom was known for its wealth and population. 5 kings ruled over the Jordan Valley, proud and powerful. They had once submitted to the northern superpower, Assyria, paying tribute for 12 years. But in the 13th year, these southern kingdoms united, refusing to pay tribute and initiating a rebellion. What was the result? The Assyrian coalition was furious. 4 kings marched south, leaving destruction in their wake. Adramelech, Arioch, Kedal-Lahama, and Tidal led their armies from the north to the south, sweeping through Syria, east of Israel, Moab, and even defeating those tribes called the Giant Descendants. Finally, they engaged in a decisive battle with the 5 kings of Sodom in the Dead Sea Basin. The land was filled with many tar pits, mud, and asphalt, making it a natural trap. The fight was fierce and brutal. The people of Sodom suffered a crushing defeat, many fleeing into the pits, while the rest were captured, including Abram's nephew, Lot. News arrived that Abram's decision was shocking. Not long ago, he had lied, claiming that his wife Sarai was his sister out of fear that the Egyptians might covet her beauty in order to protect his life. Now, he had changed his approach, taking up arms without hesitation. He immediately assembled 318 well-trained strong men from his household, along with 3 allies, Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner, and formed a strike team, setting out from Hebron and heading north overnight. Near Dothan, under cover of darkness, this small unit silently launched a surprise attack on the Assyrian coalition camp. Many enemy soldiers were sleeping soundly, caught off guard, suffering heavy casualties. Abram seized the opportunity to pursue, pushing all the way to Damascus, ultimately defeating the larger force and rescuing all the prisoners, including Lot and all his possessions. Abram, who returned victorious, was greeted with both the king and the priest. The king of Sodom welcomed him in the Valley of Kings, praising him as a great hero. But more mysterious was the appearance of Melchizedek, the king of Salem. He was not only a king, but also a priest of the Most High God. He blessed Abram, held a feast to celebrate, and accepted a tenth of the spoils offered by Abram. However, Abram did not indulge in glory. He refused the spoils offered by the king of Sodom, taking only what his servants needed for food, and returned the rest. He said, "Lest you should say, I have made Abram rich." At this moment, Abram was not only a warrior, but also a steadfast leader of faith. Because of this, the Creator appeared to him and said, "Abram, do not fear, I am your shield, and I will greatly reward you." But Abram sighed and said, "Lord, I have no children. What good is all this to me?" He was an elderly man nearing 100 years old, filled with loneliness and anxiety. The Creator then promised him that he would give him a son of his own. His descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Abram immediately offered a sacrifice, following the Creator's instructions to take a 3-year-old heifer, a she-goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. Between the sacrifices, the Creator prophesied his descendants would dwell in a foreign land, oppressed for 400 years. They would go down to Egypt and be enslaved, but in the end, they would return and inherit the Promised Land. This prophecy laid the groundwork for Israel's later exodus from Egypt, and Maxim's piano piece Exodus is related to this event. Time passes, Sarai still cannot conceive. So she gives her Egyptian maid Hagar to Abram to be his wife, hoping to have a child through her. Hagar indeed becomes pregnant, but as a result, she despises Sarai, angers her mistress, and is expelled from the camp. God's messenger encounters her in the wilderness, commands her to return and submit, and says her son will be named Ishmael. He will be the father of many nations. This person is the ancestor of the Arabs. After 13 years, the Creator appeared again and told Abram Sarai will personally give birth to a son for him, and commanded that Sarai be renamed Sarah. She is to be the mother of many nations. He also instructed him that great nations and kings will descend from his offspring. The land I give you, they will conquer through war, taking possession of the entire Canaan land, from Lebanon to Egypt. This is today's Palestine. The land promised to the Jews today is derived from here. The Creator instructed him not to let his descendants intermix with other tribes, so they must be circumcised on the 8th day after birth. The Creator made a covenant with Abram, establishing him as the father of many nations, and from then on, his name was changed to Abraham. He also commanded him to perform circumcision on himself and all his household as a sign of the covenant. So, at age 99, Abraham circumcised himself, Ishmael, and all the servants in his household, becoming a people in covenant with the Creator. This is the full story of the Battle of Sodom. It was not just a simple war, it was a test of faith, a transformation of Abraham from fear to conviction, a turning point where family and national destinies intertwined. However, the true end of Sodom has not yet arrived, for the greatest judgment upon that city will come from the heavens. In the next episode, we will take you into the catastrophe of fire and brimstone, witnessing how Sodom was completely erased from the map. Are you ready? Do you think Abraham's transformation from timid to hero was due to familial bonds that run deep, or because of a divine calling, or perhaps both? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'm Angus. Thank you for watching this episode of Josephus Jewish History. See you in the next episode.